In looking for a linear function, we know that's going to be y equals mx plus b. Some keywords are per, each, or every, because that's going to mean, a constant rate. So right here I have 4%. That's a giveaway that it's exponential. Right here I have a rate, which is per minute, so that's going to be linear. 2/3 is exponential decay. It's going to look like that. This is also exponential. And the last here, I have a percentage. This is also a giveaway that it's exponential. So letter B is a linear function. If I'm looking for the fastest rate, I'm looking at steepness. So I'm looking for a line that's going to go up faster. Right here is the interval between 8 and 10 days where it's fastest. So letter C is going to be the option. If I'm looking at the first and the fifth term, let's do A of 1. So that's the first term. All I'm going to do is plug 1 into the equation. So instead of n, put 3 times 1 minus 7. A of 1 is equal to 3 minus 7, which is negative 4. A of 5, do the same thing. Plug in 5 for x. So 3 times 5 minus 7. 15 minus 7 is 8. And then it's asking us to find the sum. So that means addition. I'm going to add negative 4 and 8, and that is going to give me positive 4. So positive 4 is my answer. In geometry problems like this, you always want to draw the shape that's giving you. So I'm going to draw a rectangle. It's saying width is 3/4 its length. So width is 3/4 its length, which means that this side is also 3/4L, leaving the other sides to just be length. Okay, the perimeter is 420. So that means I'm going to add all of these sides. So I have L plus, instead of using this variable, I want to keep the variables the same. So I'm just using 3/4L plus 3/4L, and that's going to be the 4 sides of my rectangle. Now these all have L, so these are all like terms. Let's combine these two. It's going to be 2L, bring down the 420, and 3/4 plus 3/4, I can just add the numerators, is 6/4L. These two can also be converted. 6/4 is 1.5. And when I add 2 and 1.5, that's going to be 3.5. My last step to get length by itself is to divide by 3.5 on both sides. And on your calculator, 420 divided by 3.5 is going to give you 120. So length is equal to 120. When I go back and read the question, it's asking for length, so this is going to be your answer. Okay, so there are 2 ways to do this problem. You can do it by hand, or you can do it by Desmos. I'll show you by hand first. Since it's an intersect, they're going to be set equal to each other. So I can take the quadratic and the linear and set them equal to each other. All right, in order to solve this, I can move all of the like terms onto one side and set it equal to 0. So draw my river. I'm going to move both of these over. When I do that, these cancel and these cancel, leaving 3x squared plus 3x minus 18. I set it to 0 because I'm looking for the solutions, aka the zeros. So when I do that, I see all of these. I can factor out a GCF of 3, leaving x squared plus x minus 6 is equal to 0. Keeping the 3 and keeping the 0, I'm going to make them into 2 binomials. Put an x in both of them. My factors of 6 are going to be 1 and 6 and 3 and 2. I know this is going to be my option to get this 1x over here. So I put a 3 and a 2. It's going to be positive 3 and negative 2. X is going to equal to negative 3, be equal to negative 3, and then x is going to be equal to positive 2 in this scenario. Using these values, I'm going to plug it into the easier equation. So when I plug this in here and plug this in here, I should get negative 20 and 35. Another way to do it is on Desmos. So I plug in my 2 values here, and just taking a look at my graph, I want to see where they intersect. So when I do that, here's an intersection right here, and here's another intersection right here. So I have -3, -20, and 235. So that confirms what I have here, -3, -20, and 235. In this problem, it's looking for the line of best fit. So what I need to do is use my calculator to input these values. So on my calculator, I'm gonna hit stat, enter, and then I'm gonna put in these values, which I've already done. Next, I'm gonna hit stat and go to calc, go down to 4, and then record these values to get my line of best fit. So right now I have y equals 0.21x plus 62.7. So that matches what my calculator has. 0.21 and then 62.7. When I'm done with that, it's asking what is the meaning of the slope. So of those values, you're just looking for the slope, which is m, and that value is going to be 0.21. So the easiest thing to do is figure out which one of these has 0.21. It's not going to be 62.7. That's going to be your y-intercept, your b value. Not 57.6, not 6.7. It's actually just going to be 0.2. So automatically I can rule that it's going to be letter D. But why does that make sense? It makes sense because slope is rise over run, or y over x. In this case, it's going to be life expectancy over years. So if I put 0.21 over 1, it's 0.21 life expectancy for every 1 year, and that matches average life expectancy at birth increases about 0.2 per year. In this problem, it's asking about standard deviation, which by definition it means the variation from the mean. Now, taking a look at these, it's having plus or minus values from this term, this variable w. So if I think about it, I can visualize it. Let's say w is 0. So let's say this is the w value. It's going up to +3, so I can imagine it as +1, +2, and +3. On the minus sign, it's going from -1, -2 to -3. So that's how we can imagine it. Now for standard deviation, the larger the spread, the bigger the standard deviation is going to be. So I can get rid of A and I can get rid of B because the standard deviation, it's only going -2 and +2. So these would only be going with a spread of around this. However, in this scenario where there's +3 and -3 in these situation, the spread's going to be going further. So I know C and D are going to have the bigger standard deviation. Now in this scenario, I have a -1, a W, a +1 in between. So on this, I might have something like a -W, W, and +1. So let's say this red line is letter C. In letter D scenario, in between I have W, W, and W, which means they're all concentrated right in the center. It's like I have 3 W's right here. So let's say this is letter D. In this scenario, it would be still going from -3 to 3, but it would be much more peaked, something like this perhaps. So in this scenario, the standard deviation would be bigger, the variation from the mean, in letter C. Another way that I could double check this is assuming that the W value, let's set it equal to 0. In this way, I can use my calculator to find out what standard deviation would be. So if I have 0, it'd be 0 minus 3, -3, 0 minus 1, -1, 0, 1, and 3. If I want to find standard deviation, I'm going to hit stat, calc, and go down to 1. When I do that, my standard deviation would be this sigma value. It would be 2. In this scenario, go back to my L1 table, assuming it again is 0, I'd have -3, and then I have 0, 0, 0, and then 0 plus 3, which is 3. Again, stat calc 1. My standard deviation here would be 1.9. And in this situation, I can tell that my standard deviation is higher for letter C. Okay, so Abby scored, so we're looking at quiz averages, so I have to add what she has so far. So right now she has 87, a 93, 96, and 89. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 quizzes. What does she want to score on her 5th quiz? So she needs a fifth quiz. So I'm going to add a variable x to have an average of exactly 91. So I want this average to be equal to 91. And I find average by putting the sum and dividing it by the number of values there are. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I can use this to figure out what her missing test score is going to be. My first step is to add all these values together. So when I do that, I'm going to have 365 plus x. Drop everything else down. My next step is to get rid of this divided by 5. So I'm going to multiply by 5, canceling these out. And 91 times 5 is going to be 455. When I drop down on this side, 365 plus x, my last step to getting x by itself is just subtracting 365 from both sides. These cancel, leaving her final test score, which is going to be 90. It's asking for this missing side QR, so this is the side that is missing. The information that they give us is that the perimeter is 8x minus 6. Perimeter means I'm adding this side plus this side plus this side. So when I do that, let's add the two sides that I have. X plus 1 plus 3x minus 1. And then I'm going to add this third side, but I don't know what it is, and my perimeter is going to be equal to 8x minus 6. When I combine like terms, I know that this 1 minus 1, 1 minus 1 is going to cancel, and I combine x and 3x, which is equal to 4x. So I want to figure out 4x plus what is going to give me 8x minus 6. The easiest way for me to do that is to solve. So I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides, canceling this, and then on this side I have 4x minus 6. So my missing side is going to be 4x minus 6, which is letter B. I can double check this by plugging this back in up here. And then I have x plus 3x plus 4x, which equals 8x. And then 1 minus 1 minus 6, which is equivalent to negative 6. This is another problem that you can solve by hand or Desmos. I will show Desmos after I show it by hand. So I can tell that this is a quadratic. So I'm going to set it equal to 0 in order to find the solutions. So in order to do that, let's do 4x squared minus 52x plus 169 equals 121. I want to get this side to equal 0, so I'm going to subtract 121 from both sides. Now it's equal to 0, and on my quadratic side, I have 4x squared minus 52x. 169 minus 121 is positive 48. All right, over here I have a GCF, which is going to be 4, so I can factor that out. This becomes x squared. 52 divided by 4 is 13. And then 48 divided by 4 is 12. And this is all equal to 0. When I do that, I'm going to keep my 4 here and divide into two binomials. Inside my binomials, because the coefficient here is 1, I'll just put an x in each of them. Now my factors of 12 are 3 and 4, 6 and 2, 12 and 1. In order to get 13, I know it's going to be 12 and 1. And to get negative 13, it's going to be minus 1 and minus 12. When I set this equal to 0, my x value here is going to be positive 12. My x value here is going to be positive 1. So letter D is going to be my choice for my solutions. Another way to do it is that I can take this or this and plug it into Desmos. So when I do that, I have my equation here. Plug it into Desmos, and my intersections are 1 and 12, which match what I have here as 1 and 12. All right, in these problems, you always want to start off by drawing the shapes. Let's begin with the rectangle. So in this rectangle, let's take it bullet point by bullet point. The length is 5 more than its width. So the length is 5 more than its width. L equals 5W, or 5 plus W. On the opposite side, it's also length equals 5 plus W. And it doesn't say anything about the width, just that it's W. So on the width sides, I'll just put the variable W. Now over here, I have a triangle. I'm just gonna draw a right triangle. There's a shorter leg and a longer leg. The shorter is equal to the rectangle's width, so that's W. I'm just gonna put that right there. And the length over here is twice, so 2 times the length of the rectangle. The length is 5 plus W, so it's 2 times the value of 5 plus W. All right, so which function represents the combined area of the rectangle and the triangle? So let's begin with the rectangle. I know that to get the area, I do area equals length times width. So I'm gonna do the length, which is going to be 5 plus W, and it needs to be in parentheses, times the width, which is W. I have to distribute this W to both of these values. So my area over here is going to be 5W plus W squared. So inside here, I can put 5W plus W squared. Now for this, the formula to find the area of a triangle is going to be area equals 1/2 base times height. So I'm going to plug that in, 1/2 times the base. And instead of putting 2 times 5 plus W, let's simplify this. So this base is going to be equal to 2 times 5, which is 10, plus 2W. So 1/2 times the base, which is 10 plus 2W, times the height, which I know is just W. When I multiply these 3 terms, it doesn't matter. I could distribute this 1/2 first, or I could distribute this W first. I'm going to decide to distribute this W first. So this becomes, when I combine it, 10W plus 2W squared. Now I'm going to bring back this times 1/2. When I multiply 1/2 by each of these terms, it becomes 1/2 times 10 is 5W, and 1/2 times 2W squared becomes just 1W squared. So the area for the triangle is 5W plus W squared. Now it's asking us to find the combined area. If I combine the areas, I have this area right here and this area right here. So I need to add them together. This becomes 5W plus W squared plus, on the side, 5W plus W squared. And when I combine them, 5W becomes 10W, and the W squares become 2W squared. So right here is my answer, 10W plus 2W squared, which is going to be letter A. When I see a problem like this asking about comparing to the predicted, it's asking on a scatter plot to compare the points to the line of best fit. So these red lines right here, the distance from the line of best fit is called the residual. So that is what I'm going to be looking at. 2 ways to do this though. First, I need to find what the linear best fit model is, and in order to do that, I need my calculator. So I hit stat edit, and in my L1, L2 column, I've already put in the values. Stat calc 4. And when I do that, I have my equation, 5.2 and 76.5. So I'm going to write that over here. My line of best fit equation is going to be y equals 5.19x plus 76.5. So that's my line of best fit. When I do that, it's saying, how does Amanda's test score compare to the predicted using the linear best fit model? So Amanda scores or studies 3.5 hours. So if she studies 3.5 hours, I can plug that in here. So y equals 5.19 times 3.5 plus 76.5. When I do that on my calculator, she is supposed to get 94.7. So her predicted, this is the predicted because it's based on the equation, it's supposed to be 94.7. Now I need to compare it to what she actually got. Amanda actually got a 93. So what is the difference between her predicted and actual? So if I do 94.7 minus 93, there's going to be a difference of 1.7. And she's actually lower than the predicted. So her actual is negative 1.7. If I want to do this on the calculator, I can just find the residuals. So going back to my table, I can go over to L3 and then I hit second stat and then go down to number 7 where it says residual. When I hit enter, I go down to Amanda. So Amanda was 3.593, that's where I see this, 3.593, and it's negative 1.7, just like we had. So her residual is negative 1.7, which matches what I have when I did it by hand. So let's figure out which one of these matches negative 1.7. Automatically, I can cross out A and B because it's not 5 points lower. Instead, I can look at 2 points and 2 points because that's what 1.7 would be rounded. Now, is she 2 points lower or 2 points higher? Because it's negative, she's going to be letter C, 2 points lower. All right, so this is looking for perpendicular. When I'm doing a perpendicular slope, I'm going to take the negative reciprocal, which means I'm going to make the sign the opposite and flip the fraction. Right here, I have my original slope is negative 1 over 3. So my new slope is going to be 3 over 1 positive, which is just 3. So when I use y equals mx plus b, my y value that they give us is negative 10. My new slope is going to be 3. My x value that they gave us is 1, and I'm solving for b. When I do that, 3 times 1 is 3. Bring down everything else. And to get b by itself, I subtract 3 on both sides. These cancel, leaving b to be equal to negative 10 minus 3, which is negative 13. So when I do that, I'm just going to fill out these boxes. My slope is 3, so right here, I'm going to put 3x. My number is 13, and the sign in front of 13 is minus. I have 2 linear equations here, so it's asking where they intersect. So if it looks like this, the point where they intersect is where I am trying to find. So if they intersect, that means that they are equal. So all I'm going to do is set f of x, 3x plus 7, equal to g of x, 2x plus 12. I want to move the smaller x to keep it positive. These cancel, leaving 3 minus 2, which is 1x. And now I can deal with my constants. I subtract 7 on both sides, canceling this. And then 12 minus 7 is 5, leaving x to be equal to 5. It's asking for what the value of x is, so that's going to be letter C. If I want to double check using decimals, right here I have my 2 equations. Right here is where they intersect, and just like my answer said, it's going to be an x value of 5 right here. All right, so if we're looking at a correlation coefficient, remember that is your R value. When your R value is on a scale where 0 is in the middle, and on one side I have negative 1.0, and on the other side I have positive 1.0. Now, the negative is going to be a negative relationship. The positive is going to be a positive relationship. The closer it is to 1 means that it is strong, and in the center is going to be very weak or no relationship. So it's asking, based on this correlation coefficient, 0.85, what would the relationship mean? Well, 0.85 would be around here, so I know it's strong. And I know because it's a positive value, it's going to be a positive relationship. So automatically, because it's strong, I can get rid of C and D because it says that it's going to be weak. Next, I need to figure out which one of these is going to be positive. So if the days increase and the height increases, that's the same direction. This is going to be a positive relationship. For letter B, this increases, but this decreases. Because these are opposite, this is going to be negative. So my answer is letter A. Okay, so function notation, g of 30. That means that the x value right here, x is equal to 30. All I'm going to do is plug it in. 19.60 plus 1.74, plug in 30. I'm going to do this all on my calculator. When I do that, I get 71.8. Don't want to round it or anything. 71.8 is going to be my final answer. In this problem, we're comparing median and mean. So if the weight of the polar bear is removed, which is true. So there's an original statement and a new statement. So in the original, all my data points are including all of the bears. So what I'm going to do on my calculator, for the stat edit, go into L1. I'm going to plug in all the bears, all the weights. So 225, 300. All right, and with all of these points, I go stat, calc, and then I hit 1. And when I do that, I'm looking for the mean and the median. The mean is up here. It's going to be 369. So mean 369, and my median is going to be equal to, right here, 290. Now that is my original. My new one is going to be all of these data points except for I'm going to take out polar bear. So get rid of this. So instead of all of these points, I'm going to take out one of them. Same thing, go back to stat edit, but instead of having this 1000 for the polar bear, I'm going to get rid of it. So delete. Same thing, hit stat calc 1. And when I do that, I'm going to have a new mean 279 and a new median 280. So my mean is 279 and my median is 280. Now based on these numbers, I can figure out which statement is going to be true. So the mean decreases. Yes, that is true. More than the median. Yes, that's true because the polar bear is a high outlier. Yes, the polar bear is a high outlier because 1000 is much larger than these ones. The mean decreases, so this is true, less than the median. Okay, that's false because the median decreases more. We can get rid of that. The mean decreases more than the median because the high value balances low value. High balances do not balance low value, so we can cancel out both C and D. All right, in this problem, you're definitely gonna wanna use graph paper, okay? So we're gonna use graph paper to plot these 4 points. When I do that over here, I've already done this. So you should have a shape that looks like a rectangle, just like this. And the question's asking for the area. So I'm looking for the inside, what the area is. The area of a rectangle is going to be length times width. But if this is the length over here, and this is the width on this side, I can't just count. I can't just count 1, 2, 3, 4 because they're diagonal lines. It doesn't work like that. Instead, I can count up and down and use geometry to figure it out. On the bottom here, I can see that I can form a right triangle using the width. So now I can count up and down. This side is going to be 1, 2, and this side is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, because it's a right triangle, I can use Pythagorean theorem. So that is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. When I do that, that is 2 squared plus 4 squared equals c squared because I'm solving for this missing c side. On my calculator, 2 squared plus 4 squared is 20. So 20 equals c squared, but I can't just put 20 there. That would be a really big mistake. I have to square root both sides in order to get c by itself. So the c value is going to be the square root of 20, which is going to be 4.5. So right here, my width is going to be 4.5, which I can put down here and also up here. Next, for the length, I see that I can also form another right triangle. So over here, the side's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and on the bottom, 1, 2, 3. Again, I'm going to be solving for the missing side of c, so I'll do 6 squared plus 3 squared equals c squared. So 6 squared is 36, 3 squared is 9 equals c squared. 36 plus 9 is 45, which equals c squared. 45, again, is not my answer. I need to take the square root of it to get c by itself. So the square root of 45 is 6.7. So my missing side here for length is 6.7, which I can also put over here. Finally, to get the area, I'll go back to my original area equation. 6.7 times 4.5 to get the area. And when I do that on my calculator, I get 30.15, so around 30. So my final answer out of all these choices is going to be letter B. Looking for a linear function that's going to be a straight line either up or down using the y equals mx plus b equation. Some of the key words for linear functions are rate, per, each, every, and constant, because it's constantly in a straight line. All right, so right here I have 150 for each mile. That's going to be linear. Right here I have 15%. 15% is going to be exponential, either increase or decrease. That's exponential, not linear. Airplane descends at a rate of 20 feet per minute. That is linear. Restaurant charges $5.50 per pizza and 50 cents for each additional topping. That's linear. And then doubles. Doubles is a percentage. That's 200%. This is going to be exponential. So I have 1, 3, and 4 are linear functions. I have two functions here that I'm comparing. This first one, 2x squared, I know that gives the way. It is a quadratic. It's asking us to compare the y-intercept. So the y-intercept of this quadratic is going to be 3. That's really important. All right, the linear function is given by the table, but I do not have an equation for it, so I can do that by solving it by hand. Since this is calculator active, I guess I could also do it on the calculator too. 15 to 3 is minus 12, and then I have minus 16 and also minus 12. On this side, plus 3, plus 4, and plus 3. Those are going to be the differences. When I do slope, I do rise over run. So my slope is either going to be negative 12 rise over run 3, which should be equal to negative 16 over 4. So either way, negative 12 divided by 3 or negative 16 divided by 4, they're both going to equal negative 4. So my slope value for my linear equation is negative 4. Plugging it in to y equals mx plus b, I'm going to pick the easiest points. I like b's because they're the smallest numbers, but any of them will do. So my y value is 3, my m value is negative 4, x is negative 2, and I'm solving for b. These two numbers combined is 8. Drop down everything else, and to get b by itself, I subtract by 8. These cancel, leaving b, and 3 minus 8 is negative 5, and I have my y-intercept for the linear function. So comparing negative 5 versus 3, negative 5 and 3, it's asking for the distance. So the distance means subtraction. I can either do negative 5 minus 3, or I can do 3 minus negative 5. Either way, I should get negative 8 or positive 8. The distance between these 2 points is going to be 8. In this problem, we're asking first to find the line of best fit and then predict what it would be for a girl who has a walking heart rate of 100 BPM. So 100 BPM goes in this category, 100. It's asking what would the y value be. First step is I need to find this line of best fit. So when I do this on my calculator, stat, edit, I've already put in the values, stat, calc, go down to 4. You want to write this down. Y equals 1, x, and my y-intercept is 58.8 plus 58.8. All right, I know what my x value is going to be, so instead of x, I'm going to plug in 100. So 1 times 100 plus 58.8 equals y. When I do this, 1 times 100 is 100 plus 58.8. So my y value is going to be 158.8. So that is closest to... Okay, so we ran into a really good problem because this doesn't match any of the answer choices. So I'm really happy that I included this because it's a good learning opportunity. So it actually can't be 158.8. I went back and I looked, going back to my equation. So my equation was correct, but I want to go back to what these values were. So I have 58.8, that looks fine. 1 rounded from 1.04 is actually going to be too vague. We want to keep it as 1.04. So this will go back to 1.04. So it's not like I rounded it incorrectly, it just wasn't specific enough. So we can cross out this and let's plug this in. So 1.04 times 100 plus 58.8. Let's see if that gives us a more specific answer. So now I have 62.8. So 162.8. That's going to match letter B as my final answer. So if you ever get an incorrect answer, it does happen. It's not necessarily that you did something wrong. Make sure you're rounding more specifically. Okay, in this problem, symmetrical around the mean, if I want to imagine that, that's going to look perfect like this, where the peak is right in the middle. So your mean and your median are going to be the same. When it's skewed to the left, I have a curve that has a tail on the left side and it peaks on the other. So right here, that would be the median. And skewed to the left means that your mean is on the left side. Lastly, skewed to the right, it peaks up here and it goes long and pointy on the right side. This is the median, and that means that your mean is going to be on the right side of the median. So this is what it would look like visualized. To find the mean and median, I can do that on the calculator. Let's begin with this one. I'll label this number 1. So number 1, I already put my values in here. I'm going to hit Stat, Calc, and go down to 1. My mean is 48.3. And my median is going to be 40 right there. Okay, so that's done. Let's move on to number 2. All right, go back to Stat Edit. 15, 85, or 75, whoops. 15, 75, 85, 95, 105, and 115. When I do that, my mean is 81.7. And my median is going to be 90. For this last one, I'm going to label it number 3. Same process. Stat, edit. 15, 25, 35, 45, 55, 65. All right, I can already tell what this is going to be. Mean is 40. Median is 40. Okay, so let's begin with the obvious one. These two are the same, so number 3 is going to be symmetrical around the mean. This one, the median is smaller. The mean is on the right side because it's bigger. If it's on the right side of the median, number 1 is going to be skewed right. Over here, the mean is smaller, which means it's going to be on the left side of the median. Number 2 is skewed left. Okay, so this is kind of complicated because in this problem we're dealing with almost 3 variables. So I want to imagine this as a rectangle. I always say draw the shape. So when I draw the shape, x is equal to the width. So I'm just going to put x up here. And then y is the area. So I'm going to put y on the inside. The only information that they're giving us is that the perimeter is 64. But I do not know what L is. That is the issue here. So I know that x plus, sorry, this should be x plus L plus L, will add up to equal 64 because perimeter is adding up all the outside sides. So when I combine these, it would be 2x plus 2L equals 64. But I don't know what L is. So I can use a literal equation and actually just solve for it in terms of x. So to get L by itself, I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. These cancel, leaving 2L is equal to negative 2x plus 64. When I get L by itself, I divide each term by 2, leaving L is equal to negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1x, and then 64 divided by 2 is 32. So L is equal to negative x plus 32. So on this side, I have negative x plus 32, and I have negative x plus 32. Now, to find the area, I take the base times the height, or the length times the width. So I'm multiplying these two values. So I'm doing x times the value of negative x plus 32. When I distribute this, my final answer is going to be x times negative x squared, plus 32x. So my final answer is going to be letter D. Okay, I'm going to start this problem. It's easiest to do on graph paper by graphing this point. So 1, 4, 3, 4, and 3, 6, right here. Okay, so that's going to form a triangle, and it's actually going to form a right triangle. We can see that. So what is the midpoint of the longest side? So right triangles, the hypotenuse, which is across from the right angle, is going to be the longest side. So this is what I'm looking at. It's looking for midpoint. So midpoint means halfway through. This one's super easy. Obviously, the halfway point is right here. So when I figure out what the coordinates for that is, it's going to go over 2 and then up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the midpoint is going to be 2, 5. Another way to do this is that this coordinate here is 1, 4, and this coordinate here is 3, 6. To find midpoint without a graph, I can add the x values, 1 plus 3, and divide it by 2. 1 plus 3 is 4, divided by 2 is 2, so that is my x value right there. And then I do the y values, 4 plus 6, divided by 2. 4 plus 6 is 10, divided by 2 is 10. That is my y value. So either way, the midpoint of the longest side will be 2, 5, or letter C. Last question here, what is the slope that fits this data point? This is going to be a table. I can enter it in my calculator, stat, edit. I already put them in, stat, calc 4. All right, and when I do that, I have 0.03 plus 0, so my equation is going to be y equals 0.03x, and then I could add the plus 0 if I wanted to, but I don't need to. So 0.03 is my slope, and this is the hundredths place, so letter B is going to match that.